The people working with President Donald Trump are getting really worried. They are talking about this in private. They think the MAGA movement is starting to break really fast. One person who works with President Donald Trump told ZDO about this. They did not want to say their name. They said that the people in the White House are getting very scared. This is a problem for them. The person who is causing a lot of trouble is someone they used to think was a friend, Candace Owens. She is a wing influencer. The people in the White House are really upset about what's happening with the MAGA movement, and they are blaming Candace Owens for some of it. President Donald Trump and his people are not sure what to do about this problem. The anxiety people are feeling is real. It is happening now, it is always there, and it is affecting them personally. A ranking official in the Trump team said that their phone is getting a lot of messages from people who support them, people who give them money, and people who work with them. All of these people are asking the thing, what is going to be done about Candace Owens? When the official answered, they were of joking but also kind of giving up. They said, what can I do, delete the internet? This shows how big the problem with Candace Owens really is. The Trump movement is not saying the thing anymore. This is a problem for people who support Trump. They are getting scared because the Trump movement is not united like it used to be. Some of the people who were really loud about Trump are now talking about problems inside the Trump movement instead of talking about what is going on outside. The Trump movement is no longer speaking with one voice. For a time, Owens was one of the people who defended Donald Trump the most on the internet. She had a big platform that helped spread Donald Trump's ideas, get young people excited, and argue against what the big news outlets were saying. As time went on, Owens started to feel differently about Donald Trump. At first she just disagreed with him a bit, but then she started to openly criticize him. Now Owens is like well-known conservatives, such as Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, who still have a lot of people listening to them but are not as close to Donald Trump as they used to be. Owens and these other conservatives, like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, have a lot of fans. They do not always see eye to eye with Donald Trump anymore. The problem between people was not something you saw on social media or heard on podcasts anymore. It became really big. Everyone saw it last week at the America Fest conference put on by Turning Point USA. This conference is a big deal for conservatives. The America Fest conference is where people who have ideas about politics got into arguments on stage. The disagreements about politics that people had been talking about for months got really heated at the America Fest conference. Something big happened at this event. People who really like Trump, like Ben Shapiro, said some bad things about Owens, Carlson, and Kelly. They did not just say they disagreed with them, they said that Owens, Carlson, and Kelly were saying things that were not true, which Ben Shapiro called nonsense. This was a deal because it was a meeting for conservatives and it was supposed to show that they all agree on things. Instead, it showed that there are some big differences between them, and that is pretty unusual. People who support Trump are saying loud that people like Owens and Carlson are not important to the MAGA movement anymore. They are saying that Owens and Carlson are not part of the movement now. Behind closed doors, Trump people are having a different talk. They think the problem with Owens and Carlson is a deal and it can hurt the group's ability to work together. Trump officials are taking this issue seriously. It is a real threat to the team. The MAGA movement is at risk because of the rift between Trump people and people like Owens and Carlson. One up person in the Trump administration, who did not want to be named, talked about what is happening in a very serious way. This person said, "Our Trump movement is having a fight that is getting bigger." The phrase civil war is being talked about often in private conversations. This is not because people are officially breaking away or forming groups against each other. It is because something more serious is happening. People are starting to doubt the main story. The civil war phrase is being whispered a lot now. For a group that relies on everyone saying the thing and being loyal, it is very bad when people start to disagree. The Civil War idea is really scary for them. Losing control of what people think is a problem for this movement. The Civil War phrase is a sign that things are not going well. The division got so big that Vice President J.D. Vance had to talk about it at America Fest. He was speaking to a lot of conservatives in Phoenix, Arizona. Vice President J.D. Vance used an approach than other people in the movement of calling out the people who disagree. Vice President J.D. Vance tried to make this moment a test of how united the conservatives really are. President Trump did not make the team in politics by giving his supporters a lot of hard tests that they cannot pass. We have important things to do than stop liking each other. President Trump and his supporters have to work. We have to do things that will help President Trump and his supporters, not things that will hurt them. President Trump wants his supporters to like each other and work together. Vance said some things that people think were a criticism of what people like Representative Randy Fine of Florida are saying. Representative Randy Fine of Florida thinks that people like Carlson should not be part of the MAGA movement at all. What Vance said was very different from what Representative Randy Fine of Florida said. This shows that the MAGA movement is not sure what to do. The MAGA movement has a lot of ideas about what to do. Vance's message was calm and peaceful. Representative Randy Fine of Florida has a very strong opinion. The current situation is really unstable because the people involved are very important. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Megyn Kelly all have a lot of people who listen to them. In fact, they have as many people listening to them as some of the big conservative media outlets. What Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Megyn Kelly say has an impact on how millions of voters think about politics, the government, and even Donald Trump. They are not just popular during elections. Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Megyn Kelly are influential all the time. People who work at the White House are dealing with a situation. They are getting criticized by people who used to be on their side. This criticism from friends is actually more damaging than the attacks from the Democrats. The reason is that these former friends know what the movement is all about. They know how people in the movement feel. So when they say they are unhappy or feel let down, it really affects the White House. The criticism from allies, like the criticism from former allies, is very powerful because it comes from people who understand the movement, and the criticism from former allies is hard to ignore. The Trump administration is trying to stay calm for now. They have not said anything about Owens. They have not taken any action against Owens either. It is clear that people behind the scenes are worried. The Trump administration advisors are worried that if people in the administration keep fighting with each other, it will make people less excited about the Trump administration. This could also hurt the Trump administration's ability to raise money and stay on message when it comes to the Trump administration. The Trump administration advisors think this could be a problem for the Trump administration in elections. This is bad news for the people close to Trump. What is really worrying them is that the things they used to do to keep people in line, like giving them access to people, letting them have a say in things, and helping them get their message out, are not working like they used to. This is because now there are places where people can share their thoughts and ideas, and these places are just as powerful as the big institutions that used to be in charge. Trump's inner circle is having a time because the tools they used to use to keep people loyal, like access and influence, are not as effective as they used to be. The MAGA movement is having a problem right now. One thing is really important to think about. What happens to the MAGA movement when the people who have the power and influence start fighting with each other? Can the MAGA movement still work if the people who are supposed to be on the team are turning against each other? The MAGA movement was built on people being loyal to it. What if that loyalty starts to fall apart? The answer may determine not only the future of MAGA, but the direction of conservative politics itself. The MAGA movement is falling apart. People who work at the White House are seeing something they did not want to see. They are losing control of what people are saying. The people on the right who are very influential are not saying the same things anymore. The MAGA movement used to be, like a team, everyone was saying the thing. The campaign, the media, and the famous people were all working together. Now the MAGA movement is breaking into smaller groups and they are not listening to each other. The White House is having trouble controlling the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement is losing its power because it is not working together like it used to. People who advise the leaders think this is a bad time. It is not because of something Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly said. It is because a lot of people are disagreeing. This is happening all the time. When people criticize, it makes us wonder if the group that supports Trump is really united. Every time someone disagrees, it makes the people who work with Trump ask a question they do not want to ask: who is really in charge of the Trump movement now? The Trump movement is what we are talking about. The people who advise the leaders are worried about the Trump movement. The administration is getting really frustrated with itself. Some people who work with them think they should have dealt with the problems sooner. If they had, then maybe the criticism would not have gotten so bad. Others think that if they respond to the critics, it will just make the critics seem important and give them more attention. So the administration is not doing anything. That means the critics are getting louder and louder. The critics are the ones being heard now because the administration is not saying anything. This problem is made worse because people like Owens are not on the outside. She talks to millions of people who follow her. They think she is telling the truth. They see her as someone who's brave enough to stand up to powerful people, including Trump himself. This is especially bad for a movement that needs to seem real and make people feel something. The movement relies on people feeling like they are being honest. Owens is part of that. The fact that people like Owens are seen as truth-tellers is what makes this so damaging for the movement. When you are behind doors, Trump officials say that saying Owens is not really part of the MAGA group does not sound true to a lot of people who support them. The people who listen to Owens do not think she is an outsider. They think she is someone who helped make the movement what it is today. Now she feels like the movement has turned against her. Trump officials know that Owens and the MAGA movement are closely linked in the eyes of her audience. Owens and the people who support the MAGA movement really like her because she was a part of making the movement happen. The Turning Point USA America Fest conference was a moment. It was supposed to show that conservatives are united. It actually showed that there are big differences between them. Ben Shapiro publicly spoke out against Owens, Carlson, and Megyn Kelly. This was not just talk. Turning Point USA America Fest conference and Ben Shapiro were trying to set limits on what is okay to say if you are a MAGA supporter, what Turning Point USA America Fest conference and Ben Shapiro think is acceptable for the MAGA movement. The thing is, that plan is really dangerous. When the people in charge of the MAGA movement say that people who disagree with them are part of a conspiracy or are not loyal, they might push away voters who already do not feel like they are being heard by the people in politics, and that includes people who are also conservative. Some people who work behind the scenes said that when wealthy TV personalities fight with each other on stage, it does not help the people who support the MAGA movement and are struggling to make ends meet because they are worried about money. The MAGA movement is taking a risk by doing this. Vice President J.D. Vance stepped in. This showed that people are worried. When Vice President J.D. Vance said everyone should work together, a lot of people thought he was trying to stop things from getting worse. He wanted to prevent the group from splitting forever. Vice President J.D. Vance knows that Trump has always won elections because he included people, not just those who think exactly like him. The people who support MAGA are a group. They make decisions based on how they feel and they do not like being told what to do by leaders. Vice President J.D. Vance and Trump know that the MAGA base is very important. People like Representative Randy Fine are a story. They are part of a group that wants to keep others out. This group does not want to work with others. Some people want Carlson or Owens to be quiet. This might make some people happy. It can also cause big problems. The people who work with Trump are worried about this. They do not want the right to be divided when it is time to vote again. Representative Randy Fine and people like him want to exclude others. They do not want to reconcile with people who have ideas. This can be bad for the right in elections. The way media works has made things worse. These days people who are conservative get their news from websites and blogs instead of big news channels like Fox News. This change means the White House has a time controlling what people think about things. Media personalities like Owens, Carlson and Kelly do not need help from politicians to do their jobs. Owens, Carlson and Kelly are independent. That is what makes them strong. This independence means they do not care about what the White House thinks, so the White House cannot use tricks to get Owens, Carlson and Kelly to do what they want. Inside the administration, some officials have started to think that what is happening now is similar to what happened in the past when political movements fell apart from the inside. They think that when people inside the administration do not agree with each other, it can be more damaging than what the opposition's saying. This is because it makes people lose trust in the administration itself. The administration officials are worried that if they do not do something about the disagreements, it will cause problems. The administration is the administration. It needs to be strong from the inside or else it will have trouble. This situation is really worrying because it seems like the problems inside the group may start to affect the results of elections. Donors are getting nervous. The people who work at the level are confused. Local activists, who need to have a message to get voters excited, are getting stuck in the middle of different stories coming from people who are supposed to believe in the same things as them. The fear is that this internal conflict may soon have consequences, which is adding to the anxiety. Local activists depend on messaging to mobilize voters, and now they are caught between competing narratives coming from the same ideological camp. One ally of Donald Trump said that this was a time for the Trump movement. The Trump movement did well when it was fighting with people outside of it like the media, the Democrats, and other groups. The Trump movement was not strong enough to handle a big fight from people inside the Trump movement itself. The Trump movement was not built to deal with this kind of problem. The White House is trying to figure out what to do, but the White House does not have a lot of choices. If the White House ignores the problem with the White House will get bigger. If the White House tries to deal with the problem, the White House might be giving attention to the people who are against the White House. The White House could also try to make people be loyal. That might make people very angry with the White House. Every option the White House has will cost the White House something, in terms of politics and the White House. It is obvious that the MAGA movement is now in a stage. The MAGA movement has changed a lot. People who support the MAGA movement are not all listening to one leader. They are making their decisions. If the MAGA movement does something they do not like, they will speak out. The MAGA movement is no longer a place where everyone agrees with each other. People who disagree with the MAGA movement are now speaking out. They are not just a few people on the outside. The MAGA movement is really. People are expressing their own thoughts about it. And as Trump officials quietly admit, once a movement begins fighting itself, the outcome is no longer fully in anyone's control. The MAGA movement is having some problems, and this is causing Donald Trump a lot of trouble. He is used to fighting with people like Democrats and the media. He would often say mean things about judges and people who were supposed to be working with him. Fighting with people was what made him strong. Things are different now. The problems are inside the MAGA movement itself. The MAGA movement is having trouble with itself. This is a big problem for Donald Trump. People who work at the White House know that they do not have a plan to deal with what is happening. The usual ways they use to control people, like embarrassing them in public or taking away their access, do not work on influencers who are not part of the regular political system. Candace Owens does not need to be on Fox News to get her message out. Tucker Carlson does not need information from the campaign to do his job. Megyn Kelly does not need the approval of the party to say what she thinks. They have their ways of reaching people, their own audiences who listen to them, and they do not really care if Trump does well or not. The White House is having trouble figuring out how to handle Candace Owens and other influencers like her. They are used to dealing with people who play by the rules. Candace Owens and people like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly are not like that. They do what they want, say what they think, and that makes it hard for the White House to control what is happening. The fact that someone is independent really scares the people who are close to Donald Trump. This is the time that the MAGA movement is not doing what Donald Trump wants them to do. Some people who support MAGA are still very loyal to Donald Trump. Other people are starting to wonder if they should still support him. Now some people who are part of the MAGA movement are picking sides. It is not between the Republicans and the Democrats, it is between Donald Trump and the people who used to support Donald Trump. This change is really going to affect things. The MAGA movement has never been about people coming because they agree on politics. It has always been about how people feel and who they identify with. It is centered around a specific person. When that person is not in charge anymore, the MAGA movement is going to break. The MAGA movement will fragment because it is no longer controlled by this one person. This is what happens when the MAGA movement loses the person that everyone looks up to. Some people who advise Trump are worried that the MAGA movement will not completely fall apart. It will break into different groups. One group will still really like Trump. Another group will not be about Trump anymore. They will still want big changes, and they will still not like the people in charge. This would be very bad for Trump and his supporters when it is time to vote. The MAGA movement could be. That would be a big problem for the Trump supporters who want to win elections. The MAGA movement is very important to Trump and his supporters. The timing is really bad. People are getting worried about the economy, and the numbers from polls are not looking good for Trump. Also, people are losing faith in him. Trump cannot have things falling apart inside his team now. Campaigns need to be clear about what they want. The Trump movement or MAGA needs to keep moving. The truth is, MAGA does not have either of these things right now. The MAGA movement is struggling. J.D. Vance made a call for unity. It was not by chance. This was a message that he wanted to send out. He wanted to stop things from getting worse before they go far. J.D. Vance warned people about being too perfect. This was seen as a message to the critics and also to the people in the MAGA movement who think that excluding others is the solution. If we look at what happened in the past, we can see that this is not true. When a group starts to fight against itself, it usually does not get back together again. J.D. Vance and his call for unity is important because movements that fight against themselves rarely get better. It seems like things might be far gone for people to make amends now. The way people have been attacking each other personally and the way they have been humiliating each other in public has made things worse. People are also making accusations about each other's beliefs. This has made people take sides. The people who have a lot of influence and feel like they were betrayed do not want to quietly go back to how things were before. These influencers need to show that they are independent of Trump now, not that they are still loyal to him. Trump is a part of their problem, and they need to distance themselves from him to keep their own reputation. One important person in the party said something very honest when they were alone with others. They said, "You can deal with people who do not like you. You cannot deal with people in your own group fighting against each other." The truth is starting to become clear to people who support ideas. Donors are thinking again about who they want to give money to. People who work on campaigns are being careful. Regular people who support the movement are not sure who to listen to anymore. Donald Trump, who was always the most important person in the movement, is now having to fight to get people to pay attention to him in his own group of supporters. The big question is, will this problem with the movement get worse or get better? This will decide what happens next for Trump and his plans, and also for the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement was always about being strong and not giving up. Now it is facing problems because of its own mistakes. People on the inside will tell you that the worst time for a group is not when someone is trying to hurt it from the outside. The worst time is when the group starts to doubt itself. This is when the political force is really in trouble. It is like the group is fighting itself from the inside. The political force is questioning its ideas, and that is what makes it so dangerous. The political force is at its weakest when it does not know what it wants or what it believes in. When a movement begins to fight against its leaders, something is very wrong with that movement. The people in the movement start to turn on the leaders of the movement. This is a sign for the movement. The movement is supposed to be working to achieve a common goal, but instead the people in the movement are fighting the leaders of the movement. This kind of thing can really hurt the movement. The end rarely comes with a bang. It usually just happens and then it is done. The end is really over. The end is finished. The end rarely comes with a big noise. Most of the time the end is very quiet. The end just comes, and that is it, the end. It comes with silence, splintering, and loss of control.